Thank you very much, Kevin, for that introduction. So, to introduce myself, my name is Simon. First of all, I'd like to thank Kevin for this opportunity to speak about video. Here, I'm just putting up a small clip I had done with basically a few shots from the past 2 years. We will be doing a quick run-through in this talk about the various elements that build a good video. So I have been involved in photography for the past 7 years approximately, and in video for the past 4 years. I am mostly self-taught, with a few courses taken online, locally, and even abroad. It has been quite an obsession and a journey to improve the quality of my product, and it still is, because obviously there's still room for improvement. I opened up Videography Productions in 2019 after I was given the opportunity and accepted the challenge to help a Life Charity Foundation as a volunteer in their photography and video for 2019. The response was really good, both for photography and video, so business picked up relatively fast. However, as soon as COVID hit, obviously everyone experienced the same thing. But my passion for photography and videography is still there, so we persist on the journey. Luckily, video nowadays does not require expensive gear anymore. Most DSLRs are being built with video in mind, because as Kevin said, it's getting more and more important for the photographer to know video. Even behind the scenes shots can help the photography business, and are more than capable of shooting a good video, as long as you keep in mind technique and have some basic knowledge. As in every hobby, you can keep upgrading, and video has no shortage of equipment to upgrade to. However, getting used to a DSLR and creativity is a very good mental exercise, and a lot can be done with a simple setup. Today, most devices have good video specs, from DSLRs to action cameras to even 4K mobile phones. The most important thing in video is to understand all elements that affect picture. In photography, as we all know, we look at composition and lighting. In video, we have to consider the same elements through the whole range of motion. So now let me show you what equipment is available. This is not to scare you, but so you know what kind of equipment is out there. As we all have, there's the DSLR and mirrorless. Nowadays, as I said, are both good for photo and video. There are dedicated video cameras. These cameras are normally not as good in photography. However, they have a lot of functionality which help in video, such as inbuilt ND filters. There are action cameras. These cameras normally, as you know, have small sensors. However, they are more durable and can get those kind of shots that normal cameras struggle with. New cameras that are coming up quite good are the 360 cameras. These are quite revolutionary, and they allow you to capture 360 views and lets you process the angle in post. Mobile phone camera, I know, mobile phone for many reasons is overlooked. However, nowadays, most mobile phones have quite good specs, and as a backup camera or an extra angle in a video, a mobile phone can still be used, and most of them even have digital stabilization. There are drones, normal drones, and nowadays even FPV drones, which provide a very cool and new perspective. Obviously, lenses. When it comes to cameras, we need to have lenses. In video, lenses, ideally we go for prime lenses. Prime lenses have less moving parts and are sharper. However, zoom lenses are there. However, in video, ideally, we find a zoom lens that has a fixed f-stop. This is because, although not recommended, if you zoom in with a zoom lens that doesn't have a fixed f-stop, the f-stop will change throughout the motion of the zoom. And that's bad because it will affect the picture. Filters, there are variable NDs, which we will talk about these later, and filters such as polarizing filters, which can help you get shots like through windows or obviously cutting out that reflectivity. We have tripods. These are a bit different than photography tripods, a bit heavier usually. Video head or fluid head. This normally helps when you have a fluid head to have that smooth motion when panning. We have reflectors and diffusers. These can be used as in photography, and we can see some in the tips and techniques later. We have fixed video lights. Obviously, strobe and flash do not work, so we need fixed video lights. Ideally, these kind of lights would need to be variable in intensity, and nowadays color cast as well. Microphones. Microphones is a very broad subject. There are many types of mics, depending on use. I personally know a little enough to get by, basically, but this can be literally a whole workshop on its own with people which are much more expert than myself. We have sliders. Sliders are really interesting. There are both manual and electronic sliders. These can help with getting some motion in shots and even the parallax effect. There are gimbals for any kind, for DSLR, for mobile phone, for everything. These may make professional shots possible. They help a lot with stabilization. There's shoulder rigs. This is the same purpose, helps with stabilization, and even helps the camera operator to shoot for a long period of time. And for the end, there's monitors or recorders. These can provide a better picture when working, instead of working on the small monitor that the camera provides. And even some recorders help with the processing power in the camera. So you can actually shoot better specs than the camera is really able to. I know it's a lot. However, the beauty of video is that a lot can still be done with a very simple setup. If you have just a camera or just a mobile phone, if you know a little bit about settings, tips, and techniques which we will be going through, you can really do a lot. As you all know, and might agree with me, it's fun to have a lot of gear. However, a lot of gear can also distract you from the creative process. So, switching to video for the first time. What do you need to be aware of? Let's start with settings. What settings do we need when we switch to video? In photography, we have the exposure triangle. We all know the effects of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture in photography. At first, we can get by setting everything in auto, obviously. However, if we need a bit of creative control and get that bump in quality, we have to understand what these do individually to control our picture. Before we tackle any of that, do not confuse shutter speeds with frames per second. Frames per second is where the camera is recording a certain number of frames per second. The most common FPS is 23.967 or 24 FPS. Nowadays, most cameras have the options of 24 or 25 FPS. The reason for this, that they use this frame rate, it's because the feel and the look of this frame rate gives it that cinematic look. It gives an amount of motion blur that feels right to our eyes. And our brain approves this as cinematic. A good example of this is comparing a classic movie to soap operas. Soap operas have that look, that distinct look. That's because they use 60 frames per second instead of 24. It started out since soap operas had lower budgets and used cheaper cameras. Nowadays, they keep that look since people are used to seeing it like that. Cameras nowadays have quite a few settings, going from 720p or 1080 and going up 4K, 6K, and even 8K. That's all about resolution. Frames per second, there are cameras that keep going up to 60, 120 to 40 and so on. So what you have to keep in mind is that when you take, for example, 60 frames per second shot, you can slow that. If you're working on a 24 FPS timeline, you can slow that down in relation to that. So you can slow it down by 50% and even more, and you can still get a good slow motion video. So these are examples of what happens when you see 60 FPS. The person running is relatively sharp. 24 FPS, you get that motion blur that you can see with your eye, and 15 FPS, there's too much motion blur. Now, that said, let's go back to the exposure triangle. If we take one element at a time, as in photography, ISO is sensitivity to light. In most cameras, there is a base ISO or native ISO, which is the ISO in which the sensor produces the best signal to noise ratio, and where the sensor can achieve its full dynamic range. However, in video, there's also those that have dual base ISO. This means that the camera's image sensor has two distinct sensitivities to light. Normally, there's one, the low one, which is around ISO 400 or ISO 500, and one high, for example, at ISO 2500. At each of those base ISO levels, there is no amplification of the signal, therefore capturing the same clean image. ISO is very important when taking video, since it's relied upon quite a lot, as much as it's avoided in photography in certain cases. In video, it's used quite a lot when you can't control light, as we will see further on. Next one is aperture. Aperture is used as in photography as well. It's used to control how much light gets in and what type of picture we wish to achieve. The wider the aperture, the shallower the depth of field. So we can move on to shutter speed. Shutter speed is the last one. In video, shutter speed is treated completely different than in photography. In video, there is what is called the 180-degree shutter rule, which means that if you're shooting at 24 FPS, you multiply that by 2 and you have 48. Nearest shutter stop would be 1/50. This helps to get the necessary natural motion blur for that shutter speed. If, for example, you shoot 50 FPS at 1/25, then motion blur will be introduced in the image more than is natural. If you go the other way around and shoot 50 FPS at, for example, 1/500 shutter speed, the image will look a little over dynamic, and the lack of motion blur will be noticeable. So, what does that mean for us? Shutter speed is kind of fixed. Aperture is there to provide creative freedom, depending on the scene we want, and ISO is very limited to provide control over light. That is why there is kind of a fourth element that we need to control, that is light. Light is controlled in various ways in video. When we see professional video cameras, they have inbuilt ND filters, which is really comfortable. You can add and decrease everything through the side of the camera. In DSLRs, we tackle that by applying ND filters, or for easier use, a variable ND. As you all know, variable NDs are two bits of polarizers moving against each other to block light. These are kind of avoided in photography since they can reduce sharpness and have, in some cases, some vignette. However, in videography, it's a very, very essential tool. So, let's see if we can apply these to a scene. If we say we want to shoot an outdoors interview, for example, and we run through the settings together. As you can see, it's a sunny day, it's harsh light, therefore ISO will be at 400. It's the lowest ISO, so it will be the cleanest image. Since we're shooting an interview, it will be at 24 frames per second, therefore shutter speed is fixed at 1/50. And ideally, we want that separation from the background. So we will be going for f2.8. And to have that compressed look, we can put a 50mm lens. Put all that together in a harsh sunlight, the image will be overexposed. So that's where the variable ND will come in. Needless to say, as all filters, it's useless to buy a cheap piece of glass and putting it in front of a very expensive camera and lens. So a good quality variable ND can help the situation together with the camera and lens. In filmmaking, most shoots are filmed at night. The reason for this is so that they can avoid the use of filters and have full creative control on the light that is coming into the scene. Even the shots that are shown in daylight, sometimes they are shot during the night with large studio lights from outside. That way they can avoid the sun moving, changing shadows, cloud cover, and even if certain scenes are taken not in consecutive time, there's continuity from one shot to the next. So the next important setting is white balance. White balance is crucial to set beforehand. In photography, we learn that white balance is good to set, however, we get away with it when shooting RAW, and we can adjust this in post-processing. This is crucial in video to set beforehand, especially when having multiple cameras. There is some flexibility in post, but not as much as photography. So, next important thing to discuss is focus. In video, the normal trend is to set the focus to manual whenever possible. Most cameras, the most recent cameras, are really improving on autofocus. They have a really good technology and it's getting there. However, to be safe, it's better to set in manual. Most cameras, even when you have stationary subject, they constantly search for the subject or focus breathing, as you can see slightly on that monitor of the camera. In photography, it does not bother us that much unless we are focus stacking. That leaves the video showing that pulsating background and constantly going in and out of focus, which can be annoying for the viewer. Ideally, we focus to manual and work around that. So working around that means either leave the subject stationary, doing slight movements sideways, so you keep the same focal length from your subject. In film, when that distance varies, there are specific people employed which are called focus pullers. So we spoke about all the settings to start a video. So let's talk a bit about some tips and techniques when it comes to actually doing your very first video. There are a few elements that make a good video. Personally, the most important rule that I've heard so far is that story is king. So, what to keep in mind is that the viewer, especially in today's society, has a very short attention span. Therefore, the video has to be shot with a story in mind. Intro, subject, and ending. Some of you might say, what does this mean? I'm not shooting a movie, I have no story to tell, all I want is shoot a 60-second video. However, this is a mental exercise that applies to all videos, even a short 60-second video. I'm going to show you an example that I took during this pandemic, basically. I took a few videos around Malta as an exercise to keep myself busy. In these short videos, I wanted to show the area that I went for a walk during sunset. So a video will start with establishing shots. These are a few shots where I am of where I am, basically, and what I can see around me. Then there's the subject of the video. In this case, I wanted the subject to be the sunset. A few shots of the sunset, how nice it is, and everything. Closing off with the sun going down and night. And the video is this. So that's an example, but the same concept can be applied to everything and anything. For example, if we can see an example of a product videography, most of them show details or elements of the product being advertised. Then the subject as the product itself in a dynamic environment, closing off with the view of the product clearly visible, or as they call it, a hero shot. As an example, we can see this 15-second video from YouTube, from Daniel Schiffer. He has a very interesting style. See if you can break down what I just said in his video. Okay. So, if we break down the video, the first part is showing details of the can. Then there are a few shots that show the oranges, because the can is vodka and orange, apparently, which form part of the can being advertised. There's orange smoke introduced to keep in with the theme of the orange and the fruit. Then we have a few action shots like the can opening up and being poured down, and to add that dynamic element. At the end, there is what I call the hero shot, which is the can and the statement vodka soda made bold. So, moving on to the next step. When on a shoot, ideally you start by having a clear idea of what the video is going to do and who is going to see the video, basically. At first, ideally, keep shots simple, focus on story. Keep camera on solid surfaces, such as tripods, and do simple stationary shots, so you avoid camera shake, which is very important. There are a lot of techniques that can be done in post-processing to augment a stationary shot. So even though you start with stationary shots, you can do a cam burns, like zooming in a little bit or zooming out a little bit, and a lot can be done. After those simple techniques, we can evolve, such as putting the camera on a slider such as this, without buying more equipment. We can move the camera sideways on a bench or on a towel, or in some cases even toilet paper. And getting into transition techniques help a lot with your story. Another two very simple techniques to get stable shots are these. Both use the camera strap. First one, I know it looks a bit ridiculous, but by pulling away and using the tension of the camera strap against your neck, stabilizes the footage a lot. Second technique is actually simpler. It's getting the camera strap and wrapping it around the lens like this, and using the same strap to carry the camera. This can stabilize the camera by reducing your own shake to the camera directly. So, next step, something that is very obvious to everyone, is rules of composition. Rules of composition. If you have a center shot, it's to give importance to the subject. However, even rule of thirds still applies here and can be a great guide. However, as obvious as it may seem, it gets trickier since it's a moving image. Therefore, we have to keep in mind all the movement, moving subject in relation to moving camera, light, and audio. So, speaking of audio is very, very, very important to control. It can be easy to control, but most people overlook it. This is a small video that I'm going to show you of how important audio is. We can watch a video with bad picture and good audio, and we're fine. However, we cannot watch a video with good picture and bad audio. So let's see this example. Don't know why it's going back. So we're going to start at here.
And we're going to show you two examples. First, really good audio, but really terrible video. So you can see with really terrible video how you can follow what I'm saying, how you can get into the story, despite the fact that the image has been degraded. Directors will use this creatively, like the Blair Witch Project, which is like an hour and a half of really terrible video, but the audio is so good you can follow the story. Things change drastically when we switch that around.
Suddenly, with really bad audio, it's hard to take what I'm doing seriously. It's hard to take this whole video seriously. And to get through something like this that's even 5 minutes is painful. This might work maybe with action cams if the content is really good, like a skydiver. We kind of forgive that for a second. But for an actual film content, you can't pull this off.
So that shows how important it is to know that if you're recording audio, to do this well with the proper mic for the situation, and if it's in a windy environment, with a windshield, also known as a dead cat. So let's move on to the next tip. This is a simple one, which takes a lot of time, and some people might try to avoid it. But whenever possible, shoot multiple takes, even if you think you got the right one. In post-processing, something might pop in front of you that distracts from the shot. A passerby, a car passing in the background, church bells, a plane. These are all things that happen to me. So let's move on to the next step, which is lighting. As we spoke before, whenever possible, control the light. I had a lot of events that I shot outside and live events. So there's very little you can do to control the light, apart from using, obviously, the variable ND. However, if I'm doing an interview in a live event or something remotely that I can control, the two thoughts that pop in my head immediately are audio and light. So I try and isolate the person into a quiet corner, use the appropriate mic, and have the light I can control. Be it in the shade near a window, or if it's too sunny, I just use a diffuser to eliminate the harshness of the sun. However, if it's not a live event and more set up, more controlled, it's very, very important to consider the ways of controlling light. As we said before, using quick methods such as setting up a reflector or lighting up shadow side with a video light. It makes the world of a difference and makes the product look that much better. Once I was talking to someone and he told me that you can get a professional look by using the proper audio and light and shooting with just a mobile phone or a small action cam. But you can never get a professional look with the best video camera in the world and not considering light and audio. So let's move on from equipment and settings, and let's talk a bit about post-processing. There's the Kevin, there's Mike. Okay. So, post-processing. Here it's a different world from photography. There are many software that can have different capabilities in video editing. Most famous ones that I know of are here, Adobe Premiere Pro, Final Cut, and DaVinci Resolve. However, there are many more that can do similar or have very different capabilities, such as After Effects and Apple Motion, for example, which are more inclined on VFX, video graphics. So, speaking about post-processing, let me show you the workflow I apply when shooting video. In post-processing, organizing yourself is key, since it can be overwhelming when bringing in everything together. Personally, my workflow is data dump, storage into a hard disk, and creating the project. My method of storing is that I name folder by date, project name, split everything by camera I used, split RAWs and video files if I have. That way I can pick everything I need. If I'm shooting a more complex scene, you can go into much more detail and split video files by scene, for example. First thing I do after I create a project is get music. Music is a kind of a sensitive subject, since nowadays, when everything is digital, you have to be careful on the rights. You need to use royalty-free music to use in video. Otherwise, you have the risk of having the video struck down, and obviously legal action can be taken. Basically, there are free sources that can be used. YouTube has its own library with free music that you can use for videos, BandSound as well, Free Music Archive, and SoundCloud. I think BandSound and SoundCloud, they have free music. They just require, for example, tagging the source or the artist. Then there are also paid subscription-based platforms such as Epidemic Sound, MusicBed, Audio Jungle, and Artlist that have databases of songs from artists, and you can have unlimited downloads as long as you have subscription. So, what else after music? After music, I go through all the footage and choose the usable clips and start dropping everything in the timeline. I then fine-tune that to the music. I fine-tune that to the music and make sure that I have the transitions lined up to how I want the story to be told. Speaking of transitions, and since we are in post-processing, personally, I avoid any given transition that is in the software, apart from crossfade and fade to color, which are sort of the cleanest, but I only use them when I don't have any other option, basically. Personally, I don't like those swipes and stars and those kind of transitions. However, it's something I'm still trying to master. There are environmental transitions, which are transitions in which you use elements in the scene, such as the camera going behind a tree or behind a person, to help you go from one shot to the next. There are also what they are called in-camera transitions, where camera movement, such as whipping the camera from left to right, helps you make the transition scene more natural. Once all that is done and fine-tuned, next step that I take is stabilizing all the footage if needed, and color grade. Color grading is very important, especially when you have multiple locations and time of day. As you can see in movies, every movie you see that particular color grade, and that color helps tell the story. So the last thing I wanted to say was studio setup. Nowadays, it's very common for photographers to set up home studio and use it to do tutorials, or even when speaking to clients. It really helps augment that professional look. So, as we learned from before, we have the camera, audio, and light to control. Camera can be set on a small desk tripod. The tripod can be behind the desk as well, if the desk is pulled away from the wall. Or in some cases, there are people that fix the camera on a tripod head on the wall. The most important thing is that if you hit the desk, the camera doesn't shake. My setup is a small tripod on the desk, but I know that I'm on a heavy wooden desk, so I'm not too worried about shake. I just try to avoid bumping the desk. Next step is audio. Audio can be recording through various means of various mics. Personally, I went with these Rode Studio mics since I am in a very quiet room. There are headphone mics, lavalier mics, which are very good. Nowadays, you can find them very cheap. Or if you don't want a visible mic in frame, you can do as there is in the photo, and you can use shotgun mics. Shotgun mics are highly directional and can be set off camera directed at the subject. Rule of thumb for any microphone is that the closer they are to the subject, the cleaner the audio. Light is the last step. For a blogging setup, the free option would be to shoot next to a window. A window with diffused natural light coming in can do the trick very well. However, obviously, as we spoke before, if there's cloud cover or light changes midway, you're going to have issues. However, diffused video lights nowadays can be very cheap to purchase and can change completely the quality of the video being produced. Important about the blogging setup is to set the scene. Basically, you see the shot and avoid that cluttered environment. Try and keep a clean setup with key lights in the background to help with depth. So that's all I have prepared for you guys. It's beginner's introduction to all the settings to start in video, and also a quick run through on home studio setup. So we spoke about settings, we spoke about the importance of story, tips and techniques, composition, and the importance of having good audio and light, the post-processing workflow, and how to set a home studio setup. If you have any questions, please let me know. Also, if you're looking into video equipment and want my personal opinions, let me know. I have done my fair share of mistakes in the past. And if I can help anyone avoid making the same mistakes, that's enough for me.